Walk the length of any freight train in America and check the builder's plate on the front of the locomotive pulling it. The same kind of nameplate riveted onto every diesel-electric unit since the technology first replaced steam. You will find exactly one of two names. This is a modern American freight locomotive, 6,000 horsepower, weighing over 200 tons, its engine block alone heavier than most houses. Built to pull 10,000 tons of freight across the country and back for the next 30 years. A new one costs roughly $3.5 million. Wabtec, or Progress Rail. Wabtec alone builds or has built roughly 75% of every active long-haul freight locomotive currently running in North America, and about 90% of every new locomotive that meets the latest federal emissions standard. Almost everything that isn't a Wabtec locomotive is a Progress Rail one. There is no third name on that plate. There hasn't been in years. Think of it like this. Imagine if every semi-truck on America's highways, regardless of the brand name painted on the door, actually rolled out of one of exactly 2 engine factories underneath the hood, no matter who sold you the cab. That's not a hypothetical for the 18-wheeler industry. That's the actual situation for the 21st century American freight train, an industry that still moves more ton-miles of freight than any form of transportation in the country besides pipelines. So why does an industry moving 40% of the country's long-distance freight depend on exactly 2 manufacturers for the machines that pull it? It isn't a lack of money, though. America's freight railroads spend tens of billions of dollars on capital investment every year. It isn't a lack of demand. There are roughly 37,000 locomotives in active service across North America right now, with an average age of 27 years. The oldest the North American fleet has been in recorded history, meaning hundreds have to be replaced annually just to keep the existing fleet running. And it isn't a lack of history. For most of the 20th century, American railroads bought locomotives from half a dozen different manufacturers, each with its own factories, its own engineers, and its own loyal customers among the railroads. The real answer isn't a shortage of competitors. It's that nearly every one of them lost, one by one, over the course of about 50 years, until only 2 names were left standing. At the dawn of the diesel era, the locomotive market was genuinely crowded. American Locomotive Company, known as ALCO, had been the industry's dominant steam engine builder and pivoted hard into diesel. Baldwin Locomotive Works, once the largest locomotive manufacturer on Earth, tried to make the same jump. Fairbanks Morse and Lima Hamilton entered the diesel market too, betting an entire industrial legacy on the new technology. By the 1960s, all 4 had lost. Baldwin exited locomotive production in 1956. Fairbanks Morse stopped building road locomotives by 1963. ALCO, the company that once outbuilt everyone, shut down its locomotive division entirely in 1969, ending a lineage that stretched back to the earliest days of American railroading. What remained were exactly 2 survivors. Electromotive, General Motors' locomotive division, headquartered in LaGrange, Illinois, and General Electric, building its locomotives out of a sprawling plant in Erie, Pennsylvania. So who are the 2 companies that outlasted an entire industry? And how did one of them completely change hands twice in the last 20 years? For decades, EMD and GE fought for dominance, trading the lead back and forth, until GE pulled decisively ahead in the 1980s after EMD's SD50 series stumbled in reliability, and GE's newer -7 and -8 lines caught on with railroads. But neither company stayed under its original parent. General Motors sold EMD outright in 2005 to a pair of private equity firms, and in 2010, Caterpillar's rail subsidiary, Progress Rail, acquired it, folding over a century of electromotive engineering into a construction equipment conglomerate. GE went the opposite direction. In February 2019, General Electric spun off its entire transportation division and merged it into Wabtec, a rail equipment supplier that had spent decades making brakes and components rather than locomotives themselves. The $11 billion deal instantly handed Wabtec a global installed base of more than 23,000 locomotives and made it, almost overnight, the dominant name in American locomotive manufacturing. Wabtec shifted the bulk of new-build locomotive production to a plant in Fort Worth, Texas, while Progress Rail, headquartered in Albertville, Alabama, and operating nearly 200 facilities across 16 countries, kept building on the electromotive engineering lineage it had inherited, a design heritage stretching back more than 100 years to when EMD was still an independent company, before General Motors ever bought it, decades before Caterpillar itself owned a single locomotive brand. But inheriting that much market power doesn't mean it goes unchallenged, and the company on the losing end of that deal spent the last several years trying to prove it in federal court. In 2023, Progress Rail sued Wabtec in U.S. District Court in Delaware, alleging that the GE Transportation acquisition had tipped the entire industry's competitive balance, and that Wabtec was using its dominant position to lock out rivals, restricting the technical data needed for competing locomotive systems to work on Wabtec-built engines, and imposing costs on Progress Rail that made real competition harder to sustain, including, Progress Rail claimed, restricting the interoperability of onboard systems like fuel efficiency software, so that Progress Rail-built locomotives couldn't run certain competing tools without Wabtec's cooperation. Wabtec, Progress Rail argued, was already the sole supplier of certain critical locomotive components before the merger even happened. Adding GE Transportation's locomotive building capacity on top of that only deepened the advantage. The case ran for nearly 3 years. In February of this year, the two companies settled with no admission of liability from either side, releasing a joint statement confirming what the entire industry had known all along. They remain, between the two of them, essentially the only real suppliers of long-haul freight locomotives left in America. Neither company was ordered to sell off any part of its business, and neither admitted wrongdoing. The lawsuit ended not with a breakup of the duopoly, but with both sides formally agreeing to keep operating exactly as they had been. The lawsuit is over. The dependency it was fought over isn't, because the industry's aging fleet means both companies are about to get busier, not less essential. With the average American freight locomotive now 27 years old, the oldest the fleet has ever been on record, railroads are staring down a wave of replacements that has to flow entirely through these same two manufacturers, the same two Tier 4 emissions certifications, and the same limited production capacity that already strained under normal demand. There's no third certified long-haul locomotive builder waiting in the wings to absorb the overflow, and building one from scratch would mean replicating decades of EPA emissions certification, safety testing, and railroad-specific engineering that neither Wabtec nor Progress Rail is eager to help a newcomer shortcut. At the historic replacement pace of roughly 500 locomotives a year, keeping the current North American fleet running for another generation means tens of billions of dollars in orders will flow through these same two companies before a genuine third competitor could plausibly even finish certifying a single new engine design. This was never really a locomotive story. It's what happens when an entire industrial category gets whittled down from half a dozen builders to exactly 2 survivors over 50 years, changes hands between a car company, a jet engine manufacturer, and a construction equipment giant along the way. And then those 2 survivors spend the next decade locked in a legal fight over how much power one of them is allowed to hold over the other. The next time a mile-long freight train rolls past a crossing, there's a good chance every single locomotive pulling it came from one of exactly two companies. The same two that just spent 3 years arguing in federal court over which one of them controls too much of the answer. If you want to understand what happens when the same kind of consolidation locks up the tracks those locomotives run on, that story's on the left. And if you want to see what happened when General Electric's other giant manufacturing arm ended up in an almost identical two-company arrangement, this time building the engines under the wings of almost every commercial jet, that one's on the right.